SANDHAN, All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Good morning, friends. This is Professor Hiral Jani from Shri Ashwin Bhai A. Patel Commerce College, Gandhinagar. I welcome you all to this e-learning interactive session. Today, our topic is Inquiry, Reply and Offer Letters. Inquiry letters. It is a quite crucial term in business correspondence. When we talk about business correspondence, as we all know, that most of the communication in business is done through letters. Letter is a silent ambassador of business person. It enables business houses to keep in touch with the customers, with the buyer, with seller, and with various other business groups. Commercial correspondence is a correspondence by business people, buyer or seller, regarding commercial transaction. Now talking about commercial correspondence, commercial transaction, the transaction, for doing any transaction, for doing any business, it is necessary to get information. For buyer and seller, it is very important to get information before getting it into business. Information, how to get such information? As I told you that most of the commercial transaction, commercial correspondence is done through writing. The first step of business correspondence is inquiry. Before purchasing any good, it is the right of seller, it is the right of buyer to get inquiry, to gain inquiry about that product. Before getting complete information, it is not viable to get into the business. So, to get complete information about the things, inquiry is necessary. Information is necessary before dealing it into the business. So, inquiry is the first step of business correspondence, which leads to reply and which leads to offer, which we are going to discuss today. It is a two-way communication or information exchange program. The buyer asks something to the seller or the seller replies. That is why it is a two-way communication. To start any business, it is necessary to get information about that product, about the price, about the transaction, and this information is acquired only by asking, which we are going to do in inquiry letter. Now, what is the purpose of writing inquiry letter? These letters are always written to get information. Seeking information is the major purpose of drafting inquiry letter. It is necessary to get knowledge, to get information about price of the product before buying it, before placing an order. The buyer should know about its price. What is the price of the product? Only if the price is reasonable, he is going to place an order. So before placing an order, it is necessary to ask about its price. At the same time, quality is also important, to get information about the quality, whether the thing is of good quality, the quality is suitable for the buyer to buy the product. Availability of good is also important. If price is affordable, if quality is good, but if the goods are not available in the product, in the company, again it is it is not viable. So before placing an order, the availability of good is also necessary to know. And the availability of good is always depend on the demand and the supply. At the same time, terms and condition. Terms and condition is also required to know by buyer, whether the terms are feasible, whether the condition is suitable, whether the services, the discount they offer is viable or not. So all such inquiry, all such information is necessary before placing an order, before getting it into business, because before this inquiry, without this inquiry, we don't know about the product. That is why to start any business, it is right of the customer, it is buyer's right to get information, and this is done through inquiry letters. The size and mode of packing is also important to know. What is the size of packing, whether the packing is in the cartons or whether it is wooden packing, it is all depend on the goods. So such inquiry should be done. Inquiry about price of the product, inquiry about the quality of the product, inquiry about the availability of the goods, terms and condition, size and mode of packing. Now, how to make such inquiries? Generally, the seller puts an advertisement in newspaper. The seller does marketing about the product. So, when buyer wants to purchase some good, if he or she may see the advertisement, that is called solicited inquiry. When inquiry is done, when inquiry is made in response to the seller's advertisement or publicity, that is called solicited inquiry. It does happen that we read in the newspaper, we see the hoardings, we see in the magazines, on radio, on television about certain products, and when after seeing such advertisement, if the buyer feels to buy the goods, if the buyer feels to place an order, an inquiry based upon that advertisement or publicity is known as solicited inquiry. It is an inquiry made in response to the seller's advertisement and publicity. Another category of inquiry is unsolicited inquiry. An inquiry made at the buyer's own initiative. Sometimes it happens that they don't give advertisement, but as per the buyer's requirement, as per the buyer's need, the buyers take its own initiative when he or she wants to purchase or he or she wants to place an order. If we want to place an order of furniture, of office furniture or stationery, and if we don't have any advertisement, if we don't find advertisement in the newspaper, it is our own initiative to look into the list of the products, to look into the trade directory, and as an initiative of buyer, if the inquiry is made, is called unsolicited inquiry. Solicited inquiry is in the response of advertisement, and unsolicited inquiry is an inquiry made at the buyer's own initiative. Another form of inquiry is inquiry for some favor. An inquiry not about goods but about some other information, like other informations like terms and condition, its services. Such inquiry is known as, such inquiries are very specific inquiry. They are inquiry for some favor. Routine inquiry. Routine inquiry is for regular customers. An inquiry made by an old buyer in usual course of business, that is routine inquiry. This is again very important when the customer or the buyer or seller are already into the trade, are already into the transaction, and an inquiry made as a routine, not for the first time but as a routine, that is routine inquiry. Now, how to form such inquiry, how to draft such inquiry is again very important. As we all know that business letters works as an ambassador of business person. The entire impression of the company, the entire impression of the buyer is depend on the business letter. So it is very important to draft such letters carefully. Now, how to draft an inquiry letter? If a customer is making an inquiry, if a buyer is making an inquiry for the first time, the opening paragraph should be giving a self-introduction of the customer, self-introduction of the buyer, because here the seller doesn't know buyer, he doesn't know the purpose of letter if he gets the letter for the first time. So in the opening paragraph, it should be a brief self-introduction, that is self-introduction of the buyer, the customer, and the source of information, how, whether the letter is solicited inquiry, if he is making an inquiry on the basis of some publicity of or advertisement of buyer, or and the purpose of writing letter. Why is writing letter? That should be given in the first paragraph itself, because this first paragraph would create interest in the reader's mind to read the letter further. Paragraph 2. In the second paragraph, detail about the item inquired for. It is very important to give detail that for which model or for what product an inquiry is required, whether you want to know about the model, if a buyer want to purchase some mobile phones, like which companies of the mobile phone is required to know, which models are required, quantity, how in what quantity if a buyer is interested to purchase, size, and so on. So paragraph 2 will be giving an information about the product, about the purchase of the product, the quantity of the product, the model of the product, the size of the product. At the same time, paragraph 3 should be in form of request to send offer or quotation. In first paragraph, we have already mentioned the purpose of writing letter. In second paragraph, the specific information which we required to know, the specific questions which we required to know before placing an order, about the price, about the quality, about the quantity. In third paragraph, that is closing things, we need to we need to give information. We need to request them for the quotation or for the offer. Such request would attract the seller to reply, because on the basis of that reply we are going to place an order, and before placing an order it is required to get information, each and complete information, every information in detail before placing an order. As I told you, under the Right to Information Act, it is the seller is also bound to reply such inquiry, to give the answers to the customer. Now, how to draft an inquiry letter? As we talked about, the first paragraph, the opening sentences of the letter, after giving buyer's introduction, we can always open the sentences by drafting or by writing. We would be grateful to get details of our prices. We should appreciate to get details of your product. Mention the product in the letter, specific product. We should be pleased to get information about price, terms, and conditions on which you could supply. We are interested in filling our stock of manufactured to you. So could you please reply? So could you kindly? In such way, we should open our inquiry letter. If the politeness, we should be always keep polite tone for asking. Our language should be polite, as we already discussed in 7 C's, the principles of effective communication. This business letter always represent the buyer or the seller, and as we write in the letter, it works as a salesman. Business letter works as a salesman, as an ambassador. In the same way, closing statement, we should end it properly. We should close our inquiry letter properly. Like, we would appreciate your prompt response. Here, response of seller. Should your terms be favorable, we would be pleased to send our first order immediately. Keep in mind this. If your terms be favorable, we would be pleased to send our first order immediately. By such phrase, the seller is attracted towards a reply, because our order is based on the reply. We can also use such sentences like, since we plan to give you regular business, you will quote the most favorable terms. Here we are giving the hint to the seller that if you provide conditional favorable terms and condition, if you provide good discount, we would place a great number of order. So by such sentences, the seller would attract to give proper discount, to reasonable discount to buyer. you can be sure that you will get regular orders from us if your prices are competitive. Here also, by reading such sentences, the seller would attract to make reply. Now, tips of drafting inquiry. When you write an inquiry letter, when you draft an inquiry letter, as I told you, state the purpose of inquiry clearly. Clarity must be there in your letter. As one of the C's, one of the principles of business letter is to make our letter clear. If this buyer is making an inquiry, he should mention in that letter itself very clearly about what product he is asking, what he is asking, whether he is asking about its price, whether he is asking about the goods. So state the purpose of inquiry in your letter. Request for price list or catalog, because before placing an order, it is necessary to know the price. It is necessary to know the quality, which the buyer will know from its catalog or the price list. So that is also again very important to ask and clearly mention in inquiry letter. Be very precise and clear when you draft inquiry letter, because unless you ask clearly, they will not reply clearly. After reading your letter, it is they should get clear idea that what information you required, what information you want. That is why certain tips are necessary to keep in mind. Ask for samples and demonstrations if needed. There are certain products which requires demonstrations, right? If you want to purchase some electronic gadgets, if you want to purchase some camera, so before knowing its working, before knowing its function, it is difficult to place an order. So for certain products, company does provides demonstrations or company does provides sample, and from the demonstrations and sample, the buyer would decide whether to place an order or not. So ask for samples and demonstrations. Tell the seller that how you got his name. As I told you, mention whether you are